Well, the shoe has finally fallen, and we know what happened to Joel Embiid and the status for the remainder of his season. We got the report from Shams Charania that Joel Embiid has suffered a torn meniscus in his left knee from a team official. This marks the third time in Joel Embiid's career that he does have a meniscus tear, this coming in his left knee, which he did back in 2017. It was his right knee, which he tore the meniscus in last year in the playoff run that hampered him during this stretch, and it really is just a huge slap in the face and disappointment for what was a historic season. Now, I'm not going to be completely down in the dumps that I do have an optimistic mindset with these. I'm going to lay out kind of the whole process of why this could be a good thing, even though it's never a good thing that he does tear his meniscus. But we know the story of Joel Embiid. With injuries, we have yet to see this healthy playoff run, and they have yet to rule him out for the entirety of this season. That we have this from the Sixers PR that Joel Embiid suffered an injury to the lateral meniscus in his left knee, per Sixers official. In consultation with the team's medical staff and several leading specialists, he'll be out through the weekend while a treatment plan is finalized. And that final bullet point is the biggest factor in what our true mindset should be. That if this is a slight meniscus tear that can go in, get a little arthroscopic surgery, get cleaned up, and he's back in a 6 to 8 week time frame, that he could return for the end of the season and a playoff run. That the end of the season, the final game of the regular season on April 14th. Here we sit on February 1st, that there is all of February, all of March, and then half of April for that. So that right there being about 10 weeks that they do have. If it is a 6 to 8 week injury, which is best case scenario, that we still don't have a timeline, and according to the Sixers PR, does not sound like we will have a timeline until the weekend. But if that is the case, and it is a 6 to 8 week injury with 10 weeks in the season, this could potentially pave the path for him to return and have a healthy playoff runs. Now, there's a lot of ifs still hanging on things, and I would like to point out a little bit of kind of these factors here. We have this from Dr. Evan Jeffries here saying that it's a tough blow for Embiid. The big question is whether or not he needs surgery, and if he does, what procedure. The time for healing for both, the meniscectomy would be a 4 to 6 week, and the meniscus repair would be a 4 to 6 month injury. So that is the big factor in the news that we will be waiting on. Frankly, that was kind of my concern with things when they seemed to be flying him back to Philadelphia for a second opinion. I think my mindset for all of this as we sat and waited for this Joel, waiting to see what the exact news was, that if it was an injury that he was definitely out for the year, we would have already known about it. If it was nothing and just a scare, we also would have already known about it. So I kind of knew we were sitting in this middle ground, and frankly, it sounds like we're going to have to continue to sit in this middle ground for a little bit. I also just want to note a little more history as it pertains to Joel, that Derek Barnard tweeting out here that, as a reminder, Joel Embiid previously suffered a torn meniscus in the same knee back in 2017. That injury did eventually require surgery and ended his season. And then he adds that does not necessarily mean that this tear will require surgery as well. I'm just giving the history of the knee. And this coming off a quote tweet of the first report, which came out from Keith Pompey, which stated that the Sixers center Joel Embiid's MRI following Wednesday's game and further evaluation over the last 24 hours revealed an injury to the lateral meniscus in his left knee, according to the team official, and then more about them still deciding the plan there. So the bottom line is I'm frustrated. I feel bad for the guy, that I feel bad for Joel, that he cannot have this healthy playoff run. I know plenty of people are going to kick dirt on his face, be frustrated, and I hear you. I totally get that. That in the best case scenario, we get Joel Embiid at his healthiest form. And believe me, that's all that he wants too. That for this season, he has fought through, had been pretty healthy, and it just sucks on a human being level that he's dealing with this again. I also have a great deal of frustration, I think more than most, directly centered at the Sixers organization for setting him up for failure, for playing him in that matchup against the Warriors in which he clearly was not healthy, and now both Embiid and the Sixers are paying the price for it now. And now this also comes just a week before the NBA trade deadline, and this certainly impacts the game plan from here. That obviously you have different goals for the season, if not, Joel Embiid is returning to the floor. That if they're getting a look inside this knee and this is looking like a potential kind of injury that he can be back for playoffs, you absolutely still have to take these big swings and intend to win this season. That even as I'm talking about all the frustrating injuries that he has had in years past, and that history would tell us we will not get a fully healthy Joel Embiid playoff run, do I feel more confident that next year that we will, when he's 30 or when he's 31 the season after and 32, the window only gets smaller and smaller. So if there's a chance that he returns to the floor this season, Daryl Morey absolutely has to get on the phones, bring in an impact player to help this team stay afloat while Joel Embiid is off the floor, and a guy that helps them contend when he returns. That even in the best case scenario, that we knew that Joel Embiid, or we knew that this team needed help beyond Joel Embiid. That this team had to attack the trade deadline, and now it's even more important. That we know that Joel Embiid is a game changer for this team. That is a night and day different identity when he's there. They are going to have to figure out how to survive it. And I know I kind of mentioned it there, but I do not want it to get lost that the Sixers organization should be looking themselves directly in the mirror and being entirely frustrated about this whole process. That if there was a smarter approach to having a load management plan, having a game plan in place to make sure this guy is healthy for the postseason, rather than allowing him to put unnecessary stress, force himself into games, and play in that pointless Wednesday night matchup against the Warriors, we will not be having this conversation right now. Now, this is not to say that he was entirely healthy, or this is not to say that something else would not have happened if that was the case, but it still would have been a better option than this right now, because now we are at the mercy of whatever the doctors say, whatever the game plan here, and most importantly, praying that Joel Embiid has a chance to return. And this is frustrating because it did feel different this year. That I know the second round exits, the scars of past Sixers teams all stick with all of us, but this season, with the leap by Tyrese Maxey, with the addition to Nick Nurse, with guys like Nico Batum stepping up, it did feel like the ingredients were combining into something a little more special, and I do still believe that if he can return to form, if they can add that one or two impact pieces to help them in a playoff series, that this team is still a contender. So for now, I guess we have to hold on and wait to see the final news for what that timeline may be. And once again, to lay out the exact options here, this coming from Dr. Evan Jeffries, that a meniscectomy would be a 4 to 6 week injury versus a meniscus repair would be a 4 to 6 month injury. That essentially makes or break whether or not Joel Embiid will be returning to the floor. Now, there's also meniscus injuries that do not require surgery whatsoever, such as last year with Joel fighting through that and playing through that. It was clear that he was not the best version of himself with that specific injury, and I think it should be across the board that even under the best case scenario here, that this is a situation like that you absolutely shut this guy down for the foreseeable future, that there's no point in rushing his return unless, of course, it is for the playoffs. So I think, unfortunately, as much as we have clarity, as much as we see what the situation is, we're going to have to wait until this weekend and see how those meetings with doctors go. That things aren't going to get better between now and then. That the best case scenario is likely a month away from this team, but at least there is a nice 10-week period that there is a bubble. So for now, we got to keep sending our prayers, hoping that Joel is the guy, or is okay and able to return in some form this season. Even if he's not the 100% version of himself, the Sixers are a far better team when he is on it, and he does give this organization a puncher's chance. But ultimately, this is just a massive disappointment in a lot of ways. From the Sixers organizational standpoint for Joel Embiid, and just to waste what has truly been a historic season by an all-time great player in the prime of his career. 35.3 points per game, 11.3 rebounds per game, 5.7 assists per game. The first player since Wilt Chamberlain to average these numbers. Joel is all-time leader in the NBA in points per minute this season, points per 36 minutes, beating Wilt's records, which is even more impressive considering that Wilt was playing more than 12 minutes per game, more than Joel has. So this really just sucks. And I do not want it to get lost in here, that I want to wrap up on this note here. As much as I hear the frustrations, the trade Embiid comments that I know are coming, the frustration, this guy can never stay healthy, all those things. Don't forget at the end of the day, that this guy is a human being, that he feels these exact same frustrations that we are, except he actually feels the physical pain that comes through it, that him forcing himself back on the court, hearing the noise about wanting to play because of the ducking accusations and all those things, that Joel doesn't feel great about this either, guys. That in all likelihood, he's more frustrated and more heartbroken than we are. I know that guy wants to win a championship. I know what a special talent he is, and that he still is that top-end talent that it is worth putting up for and just banking that one of these days you get lucky and he is able to stay healthy. I'm not ready to wave the white flag and say he is out for the season until I have the full information that tells me that is the case. I know that Joel is going to try and return to the floor in any capacity possible, assuming that is in the table. So for now, we just have to say some prayers, hope for the best, and hope this is the best case scenario as it pertains to that meniscus injury. Thank you guys for watching this video. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button right here on Sixers Digest. Drop a like and let me know your thoughts. You can let it out in the comments. It is a safe space. I feel every bit of the frustration, the disappointment for what should have been and felt like it could have been the year. Thank you guys once again. I'll be talking with you next time right here on Sixers Digest.